From the center of the universe and the home of your Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. My name is Ben Grant, joined as always by JB, and we are getting you set for the Toronto Argonauts' second game of the 2023 regular season. They travel to Edmonton to take on the Elks. And JB, before we get into our lineup today, I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on at Something in the Water Brewing. It's a great spot for right now. The weather's nice. It is now summer. They are just steps away from Lamport Stadium. So I know a lot of you listeners go down when you can to see Argos practice. It's a great doubleheader to go Argos practice and then walk a block to Something in the Water and grab yourself a drink. It's a perfect setup, being right down there. And that's why that brewery has a beer dedicated to fans of the Double Blue, because I don't know how it ended up going down exactly. We'll tell you the full story, maybe get Darius Bladek in on it. But yeah, he wandered by there. He's in the area. It's right after practice there. It's right by the stadium. Whenever he's done with his day, you could walk by there, sit in one of those Muskoka chairs, grab a beer, and they're like, hey, you're a Toronto Argonaut player. How about we make a Toronto Argonauts themed beer? And that's sort of how Longboat was born. And Longboat still available on tap only to X's and Argos listeners. It's not advertised. It's not displayed anywhere. Go down to Something in the Water, ask for a pint of Longboat, and they know that you are supporting X's and Argos and supporting a supporter of CFL and CFL podcasts. All right, JB, we got a huge lineup today. We've got news and notes. We've got protecting Chad Kelly, the importance of that. Who's going to be starting the secondary as guys start to become more and more healthy. I think Jamal Peters is ready to go. We've got an injury update for both the Elks and the Argos. A couple of big names that we want to talk about. Then we've got the game preview, OCDC, brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. One thing, predictions, put me down for 20, and our CFL picks. All that and more is coming up on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. Right into things, JB. Jim Kelly, after the Argos game, says Chad's got to take care of himself. He's got to protect himself. He can't take unnecessary hits. And, that's a guy that knows. How important is it for Chad Kelly to remain healthy for the Argos this season?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. There really is no plan B, as we've talked about. That's all a learning process. At the end of the game there, he was very lucky to not have taken a big hit when he ran for that first down. And hopefully that scared him a little. Not scared, but, maybe that reminded him of how fragile the season is and that he is not replaceable. He is a load-bearing wall. And, I think exactly like Jim Kelly says, you can play the way he plays, but you have to know that you're letting your team down by getting knocked out. So you're not being a gamer. You're actually being the opposite of who you want to be when you put yourself into high risk, low reward situations.
And that's the thing, the low reward stuff. And maybe before I go on that, the play that you're talking about, in case listeners don't remember or didn't see that play, it was near the end of the game. Coach Dinwiddie called a run play. Technically, it's a read option. And everybody assumes at that point, at that stage of the game, when it's a read option and it's a multiple score lead, the quarterback does not keep it. The read part is gone. But Chad, being the guy he is still out there reading the play. And so he's riding the ball across. I don't remember if it was Harris or Olette, but he's riding it across and he sees that defensive end tear after the running back. So he pulls it as you would if it were the first quarter. That would be the correct read. But yeah, Dinwiddie, I'm sure, just about had a heart attack on the sideline because he's not calling that play to have it be an honest read. He ends up, Kelly gets the first down, but he takes a hit. And it's like you're saying, this team is loaded. The Argos are stacked at almost every positional group. The one place where there's vulnerability is backup quarterback. We just don't have experience there. We don't even have experience at starting quarterback, but we feel really comfortable with what Chad Kelly brings. So if something is going to go south for the Argos this year, it will be an injury to Chad Kelly. Everything else is pretty well covered. You can lose And I can't even remember the last time you could say this about a CFL team where you could lose 3 starters, any 3 starters you want on the team, and this team would be perfectly fine. They're already playing without Enoch Mwamba. They didn't even need to start Jamal Peters last week, even though they could have. And those 2 are arguably 2 of the best players on defense. So
yeah,
you just got to be smart.
It's a stacked roster.
So how do they protect Chad Kelly? Because I don't think he's just not wired that way. I don't think you can really turn it off. And like, he does know, like he's bright. He understands football really well. He gets what you're saying. It's not like Jim Kelly's talked to him about this many times before. We saw that from the Dave Naylor piece he did with the 2 of them. It's not like he doesn't know this. He does. But when you're out there and the adrenaline's running and you're playing football, and this is what you've done your whole life, and his whole life, he's played he's highly competitive. How do you turn it off?
Well, I mean, he just has to. I mean, there's no 2 ways about it. You either can listen to coaching and adapt, or you can't. And then it is what it is. It's like, how do you get a guy to stop throwing, off his back foot when he's being chased into coverage? You coach it, you teach it, you yell it, and either the guys process it or they don't. So I guess that's what we're going to find out.
How much of this is on Coach Dinwiddie to not put him in situations like that, not call plays where there's an option, or maybe don't even have him out there for the last drive?
I mean, you could definitely in, if you can't, if you put yourself at risk, then the coach has to step in and say, okay, we're going to, if we were up by 10 or double digits, then we're bringing in the backup to run the clock. I think that's an option if you can't. But I have no reason to believe, that Kelly won't. He played within himself all game. I don't have any reason to believe he won't adapt.
I really like how he responded to what we kind of highlighted as like his one big mistake, and just sort of rewatching the game.
No, I thought he played an incredibly mature game, so I'm highly optimistic that this will be this will be fine.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's talk about the secondary, because this is getting kind of interesting. You've got Jamal Peters, who's going to be ready to go this week, I'm sure. I think I would be stunned if he doesn't play this week. What do you do with the secondary? Quantas Stiggers looked great. He had an interception in the end zone. Really didn't make a mistake that I saw all game, live and on the rewatch. I thought he looked really good. McFadden played a good game on the other side. Actually, one of the best games I've seen McFadden play. And now you've got Jamal Peters coming back. But not just that, I don't think we're that far away from Robert Priester coming back either. So they could be in a situation where they have what they feel are 4 starting corners. What do you do with that? Like, it's a luxury, but it's also almost too much at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it is absolutely that a luxury. I think you definitely try and make sure that they both are getting halfback reps, and so you're able to have the subs at every position, because guys definitely go down, and you don't want to be too quick to deal from depth. However, I think you probably do entertain the idea of a trade if you can get potentially a little bit of value back for a starter / backup corner. Maybe you can get a number 3 quarterback for short yardage. I don't know if that's an impossible conversation.
It's tough. There are teams that need, like, certainly any of those guys will be starting. Well, for Edmonton this week, we'll get into that a little later. But for Ottawa, maybe
I think as an organization, if you have incredible depth, you look at areas of weakness and you look around the league to see if you can build. I think that's just due diligence. My worry about that is everyone's playing great in the secondary right now. We haven't seen Robertson Daniel make it through a ton of games. What if suddenly 2 guys go down? Well, now suddenly we do need those guys. But do you play? That's the thing. Like, I don't know where the line is. I'm not a GM, and I don't know if I would be a good GM where I would make these decisions, because I think I would want to play it safe. And you look at the roster and you're like, we've got all these great pieces. Why are we going to make other teams better
for.
Depends. I mean, yeah, I think you're probably trading with a team that's not good.
Yeah, but then what are they giving you for?
Well, that's what I mean. You'd have to have your eye on. I mean, I think probably backup quarterback. I mean, I guess you can always add another offensive lineman. Nobody, if you feel there's somebody being underappreciated, you could go get that. But that would be my leaning. I might if there's if there's a backup quarterback that you think has some potential, that might be what I would look to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I would at least wait for now. Like let's see how things go.
Oh yeah, no,
ride it for a bit. There's no hurry, no rush. And in the meantime,
it depends on Priester's timeline.
Yeah, and we don't know how far he is away. I think he's going to be back soon, but we're still probably talking a few weeks. I think if you can use them in the meantime, these guys getting reps around and getting, like you said, halfback reps, getting Sam Backer reps so that you've got multiple guys who can fill in. And everything that I've heard, everyone I've talked to with the Argos about Qantas Stiggers talks about how much of a savant he is with football, how he just picks up stuff immediately. He's a sponge, he's absorbing, and that's why he's way ahead.
Maybe you get cute defensively. I know there are NFL teams that have 7 DB packages that they put together.
Yeah, I do like that. And Coach Mace has shown he'll do stuff that's sort of outside the box. That's interesting. Put in packages where you've got that extra ability. And they're already kind of doing that with their linebackers. And that's sort of part of the plan already.
It doesn't quite work the same way in the CFL, but
right. But yeah, you can let's see what they can put together. It's way better than to have the opposite problem. And that's something that Edmonton's going through this week, where they're like, well, who's going to play corner?
Yeah, you just bring a couple of guys in at linebacker, and now, you're going, you basically have 3 defensive linemen and, 9 defensive backs.
Let's get into the injury report. So at Argos practice today, pretty good news. There were a couple little scares at the end of the game last week. We didn't feel like any were going to be long-term things or even things at all. And it turns out they weren't really. So you've got Darius Sirocco, who's got an ankle injury. He was limited today. Curly Gittens Jr. with a hamstring was limited. I think they'll both go. And then Robert Priester didn't practice, but everyone else was full. So they're in a good spot. Obviously, they've got still some guys on the 6th game, but everyone who played last week, I believe, is going to be available this week. Plus, they have the option of bringing some other guys back, like Dwayne Hendricks with his ankles full and ready to go. Jamal Peters, I think, is going to be added this week. So, that's something that I think the Argos have to be pretty happy with. They've had injury issues over the last few seasons. So to come in this year and out of the gate have a couple, but not sustain any major injuries in the opener is a pretty good thing. Now, one thing, actually, while we're talking about injuries and Jamal Peters being back and stuff, we didn't talk about this in the last segment. Maybe this is a good time to do it. Tavares McFadden, his position isn't in stone at corner. He played really well last week. Is there any way you would look at putting Qantas Stiggers and Tavares McFadden in like an open competition for that field corner spot, assuming Peters is going to be the boundary corner?
Yeah, I mean, within reason. I think, on a football team, it's a good football team is always a meritocracy, and the best guy plays. But having said that, also you do have to respect, chain of command and seniority, and guys who have been there longer and guys who are still getting it done. So that can be tricky to toss somebody over for somebody else. I would probably, unless the gap is significant in terms of who's better, I would say is probably going to be Stiggers, learning the playbook. But look, if he really pushes it in practice, yeah, I could see that.
They're both good. That's the thing. Like I was trying to think
I think it's probably too close for him to take that position away from a vet, but
right.
Yeah, I would say at this point it's probably more just him, because he has almost no football experience at even a collegiate level. So I think there's certainly plenty of time for him to get practice reps.
The other good news for the Argos in terms of injuries is Trevion Tate was a full go. He's been dealing with a knee injury, so he's full. That offensive line room is also getting pretty stacked. And at some point, Dariusz Bladek is going to be back. So they're going to have some situations, assuming everyone stays healthy and knocking on wood that they do, but they're going to have a similar situation on O-line to what's going on in the secondary. But we know there are always injuries in football, so maybe these guys will all be needed at some point, but yeah, what a luxury. Looking over to the Elks and their injuries, there's two that stand out. So Manny Arsenault didn't practice. There's 2 practices in a row. I think it was Dave Campbell that tweeted that out. Dave Campbell is the color analyst on 630. He tweeted out that it's 2 practices in a row that he's sat out. And he also tweeted out that Ed Gainey, the starting boundary corner, has been put on the 6th game with a chest injury. And so obviously he didn't practice today. Those are the only 2 Elks that didn't practice. But the loss of Gainey is huge. Arsenault is a big deal too. Arsenault is good. But the loss of Gainey, they don't really have an answer for. So Gainey's their boundary corner. And unlike Toronto, they just don't have depth at the corner spot. They've got a ton of safeties, and they use their safeties a lot, especially in special teams. But they just don't have that on their roster. And so even dealing with the Gainey injury, they ended up making a transaction today and bringing back a guy they cut earlier, a corner they cut because they realized Marcus Lewis, I think, was the corner that they brought back, and he was cut in camp. But with Gainey being out for 6 weeks, so they just don't have anyone else. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Marcus Lewis actually get right on the field, like go from not having a job to being dressed next week. Now, what did they do in terms of starter? Probably Purifoy. He was a corner in college, played corner. Actually, that's all he had played until he got to the CFL. I know in the CFL we think of him as a safety because that's what he's been doing, whether it was with BC or Edmonton. But they probably bring him over to corner. I think that's the only thing I can see them doing, unless they want to put a guy in off the street right in to start a corner. I think that's what they do. But this is a question I want to ask you this as a DC. I think probably Gray is their best corner, like pure corner. He's playing the field spot. Do you just, if you're removing Purifoy, if you're moving him to boundary corner, you decide that he's the second best corner, do you move him to boundary corner, or do you move Gray to boundary corner and then move Purifoy to field corner? Like, what do you want?
Yeah, I tend to go for a 1-to-1 substitution. I'm not a big fan of a domino when there's an injury. Now you've got 3 guys out of position. I would say philosophically, I'm more about putting somebody in who might not be the best substitute, but is simply a 1-for-1 substitution, and everybody else is still where they're comfortable, and you just, you plan around that.
I think that's what I would also do, and I think that's what Edmonton's going to do, and that, just as a teaser for my OCDC, is an area I think the Argos can exploit.
The downside of that is you've got a hole in the boat.
Right, and so we'll see how that goes for the Elks. Let's do the game preview, JB. What does this one mean? How big a deal is this game? Because I'm kind of torn on it. Because in some ways, I think this is a must-win because you can't lose to the Elks, and yet
I don't. Yeah,
maybe
it's televised.
Okay. Is it televised?
Is this a radio-only game?
Yes, and don't forget that you can hear Mike Hogan and I with the call on a TSN radio, just in case it's not televised. But no, obviously it is televised.
Yeah, I guess that's where I come down on how big it is. It is important, though, like we talked about at the beginning of the season, the Argos first half of the schedule is where they need to make hay. So that first 7 or 8 games, they really need to do well because they have advantages on buys, on playing teams not coming off buys, on playing teams that are coming off road trips, all sorts of different advantages in the first half, and that disappears in the second half, and there's some uphill climbing in those final 8 games. So I think it is important the way all of the first 8 games are really important to take care of business in situations that you should, because you have to look at the schedule and realize this is a game you're going to regret not having this win.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's kind of like how we looked at both the Elks and the Elks and Ottawa last year. They're just games that you have to win. If you are going to contend for the Grey Cup, then you have to beat the Edmonton Elks of the league. And they're going to be pretty fired up. They got embarrassed last week. And if they're not fired up, then they're going to be some serious shit. Like, I can't imagine.
Yeah, if they're not fired up, you might be looking at wholesale changes.
Yeah,
there.
like that's it. Right. So you have to expect them to be like just the competitors they are. They will be ready to go for this game. But you as the Argos, you can't lose to you can't lose to the Elks. You can't. You want to win a Grey Cup. This is a game
this is professional win time. You're a better team. You have better talent. You just have to go out there and enforce your will.
A business trip, as they say.
Yeah.
Now, how concerned are you about the trap game element of this? Elks getting shut out last week. Obviously, you look at the Argos defense is going to be watching Elks film this week, where they passed for like 90 yards.
I have found the coaching staff has, over the last couple of years, done a very good job of not having the team fall into any kind of trap game idea. I know they have BC coming up after it, but I don't know if BC is a game that necessarily their eyes are on in the way that they might be if they were playing Winnipeg. So I don't think BC qualifies as worthy of creating a trap.
I just feel uneasy about it. Edmonton hasn't won in their stadium since the 1500s, and going in there off a shutout, it just feels like a setup.
I know, but they still, it doesn't matter. They still have Cornelius as their quarterback. Unless
and they've got holes all over the place.
Unless somebody comes in and Scooby-Doo's, their rubber mask off their face, I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, they're just not as good a team. Like, you look at every positional group. I can't find a positional group on Edmonton that is
I like
better.
the running back.
Yeah, I do too. Kevin Brown's
and I like
great.
their wide receivers.
The wide receivers are good. They've got stars, but again, it also falls off a little bit after, and especially if Arsenault is out. But obviously, Mitchell, Lewis, Dunbar.
I think they're not. I don't think they're a particularly good football team.
So it's a must-win game then, JB?
Yeah, I would say. I mean,
it's the way like.
I don't know if must-win is my phrase, or maybe I'm just playing semantics, but it's a win you have to have.
Yeah.
It's in the first half of the season. You got to make hay because there's a storm coming.
It's time for OCDC. OCDC is brought to you by the Business Barbershop and Spa. They invite you to experience Etobicoke's premier licensed men's grooming lounge for hair, face, and body care, celebrating 10 years in the Kingsway. And the first 50 clients who book a service will be entered into a draw to win $200 gift card. All you got to do is, when you book, mention Argos, all about the business, and you'll be entered into that draw. And JB, I just went today. I've got a fresh new haircut. I went down there. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm a guy that I don't actually care what happens to my hair. I basically said, do what you like. I just want to sit here and relax. For me, that's it. I just like sitting in a barber chair, relaxing, and not having to think for a few minutes. That is my favorite thing about getting my hair cut. So that was great. I left feeling like $1 million. So yeah, next time you need a haircut, listeners, get down to the Business Barbershop and Spa. You can find out their information on our website, xsandargos.com, and just click on sponsors. OCDC, JB, I will start things off. Let's do the bad guys first. We'll start with the Elks and their plan. So offensively for the Elks, we know partly what they're going to do. We know they are going to force feed Eugene Lewis. They are going to throw the ball to Eugene Lewis 500 times because he talked about it with the Edmonton media. Was it today or yesterday? Today, about how he needs more targets, and everyone knows that he needs more targets. And it's true. He does need more targets. And that's the thing. You've got to scheme him open. They weren't doing a good job of that last week. And that's what I want to see early on today. Toronto will typically give you underneath stuff. Lewis was way downfield a lot last week. So run pick routes for him, run underneath stuff, run quick screens to him, jailbreak screens, slip screens, all that stuff. just to get the ball into his hands. And then once that starts working, once that starts bringing people down, now you can use your other guys. You've got speed threats and deep threats, whether it's Mitchell or if Arsenal plays. They've got other options. Dunbar, like they can go all over the place with the football. They just didn't last week. So it starts with getting some confidence for Cornelius, short passes, try and take advantage of the space that the Argos will give you. And I also do think it's important for Cornelius to run. That's another thing I want. He just didn't really do it against BC, but that's what makes him a threat whenever he is a threat. And, I'm not a huge fan of Cornelius as a quarterback. The games in which he has looked good are games in which he has used his feet. So I want to get him outside the pocket, get him on the move, really put the Argos corners in conflict. If they're going to be playing flats and they're trying to, make a call between taking a 10-yard out and a quarterback rolling to your side, that's great. Put him in that situation. So those are the two keys for me if I'm Edmonton this week. Eugene Lewis underneath, quick stuff, get him the ball 3 yards downfield, it doesn't matter, and run Taylor Cornelius like at least 10 carries for Cornelius. That's what I want from my Elks offense. JB, what are you doing for the Elks defense this week? How are you going to stop Chad Kelly and the Argonauts?
I think that, Kelly looked good, but he still only passed 60%. I'm still not terribly worried about the running game from a defensive coordinator point of view. I am going to try and get more pressure than Hamilton did on Kelly. I think you have to definitely shift your defense every time. You can't ever let him know what he's looking at from his first look. So you still have to challenge him to be able to take a snapshot of the defense after the snap of the ball. So from a defensive point of view, it's definitely a lot of deception. And, if you're Edmonton, what do you have to lose? I would throw a lot more zone blitz, a lot more blitz in not likely or predictable situations. You have to try and get him feeling a little bit uncomfortable. That's what you have to do for quarterbacks who don't have a lot of time. That's kind of the book on any quarterback, and Hamilton couldn't, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. So if I'm Edmonton, and we certainly know Coach has lots of tricks up his sleeve for young quarterbacks, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to confuse him, and I'm trying to get him seeing ghosts.
And I thought Edmonton's defense actually played pretty well against BC. Like, they weren't the reason they lost.
Look, Coach Jones knows what he's doing. I mean, that's not going to be an issue there.
Yeah, BC had one touchdown last week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're right there.
I mean, I do think that is a potential issue. I do think that, Coach Jones is a wily old defensive coach, and sometimes that can be a problem with a young quarterback. But certainly in the Toronto game, they had Hamilton pinned on what they were going to try and do. So we'll see what happens.
Let's switch over to the good guys. So as OC for the Toronto Argonauts, I've got a couple plans. The most important thing to me is I want Chad Kelly to start doing the things he didn't do last week to avoid creating a book on him, a way that, he's got to avoid tendencies, because that's what every defensive coordinator in the league is focusing in on right now with Chad Kelly. They want to see what he does because there just isn't a lot of film on him. And so they're going to take last week's game. They're going to start looking at, well, what does he do in this situation? Where does he like to throw here? Where doesn't he like to throw? And what they'll see is on flood routes or flood concepts, which Coach Dinwiddie likes. And what I mean by that is like several receivers going to the same area, to the same side of the field, for example. Typically, most quarterbacks like to throw underneath if it's open. We saw McLeod Bethel-Thompson do that. So if you've got, let's say you've got a 5-yard out and a 15-yard out, and one corner in zone is often going to split the difference between the two, they'll usually play the deeper guy because that's what you're supposed to do. It's more dangerous. They'll give up that underneath throw, and so they'll play closer to the deeper guy. And they're trying to take away both, but you can't. And so, yeah, most quarterbacks will play it safe and take the shallow guy. Chad Kelly, every single time last week when he was put in a situation where he had to make a shallow read, a medium read, or a deep read, he would take the deepest one available, the deepest one that was open. And if they're both open, he'll stretch it downfield. And I like that in terms of how aggressive it is, but it's a tendency that coaches are going to start playing into now. And so it's just 1 week of film, but I bet you this week, those flats corners are going to be bailing and looking to pick off those second level concepts. So part of my plan offensively is take the checkdowns this week. So erase the book, erase the data so that they've got to start fresh. And they're open. It's not a bad read. It's not a bad throw. And they're going to be more open this week because the plan is to stop them. So that's one. The second thing is I want to get Chad Kelly out of the pocket, not to run, but just to change the launch point. We've already talked about how Purifoy's probably going to be over there at corner or some new corner that we haven't seen work with Thompson at the boundary half spot. We've got to change the launch point to make it more difficult. So even the angle is different, not just the position. Everything about it's different. And we know the communication probably won't be as solid between the boundary corner and the boundary half. So move the pocket, challenge those DBs, make them talk, and then take your checkdowns when they're there to erase what defensive coordinators thought they knew. Where are you going, JB?
Defensively, I think lining 12 up will be helpful against Edmonton. I'm not sure much more needs to be done other than making sure that you have all 12 guys on the field.
You can't look past them.
I would not send pressure. I think a couple times they got burned last week on screens and the quarterback getting out because the pocket collapsed and there was no lane sort of discipline in the middle of the field. So I would make sure that doesn't happen, especially against Cornelius. Don't give him free 25, 35-yard runs. So I would, keep your lane discipline. You don't need to sack Cornelius to beat him. The sacks will come, but I would spend the first quarter shutting down the run. Don't let them get any kind of confidence going. And then after that first quarter, really start, because hopefully we've scored a couple of times, then shift your defense into a pass defense and, keep everybody in front of you, keep your lane discipline, don't get downfield, keep your contain, and force Cornelius to nickel and dime you down the field, because that's the recipe to a nice win. So I think come out aggressive against Brown on that first quarter, play complementary football with the offense, getting the points. And then once you get up, then just sit back in the weeds and wait for those passes.
Does it worry you at all that the defensive tackles last week for Toronto abandoned the middle so often? Like, with so many times we saw Bo step up because there was no one there.
Yeah, I mean, they'll see that on tape. So I think that's depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish. I mean, you can't be going for a sack every play, right? Some plays have to be just simply you're two gapping and you're engaging your receiver, your offensive lineman, and you're just holding the pocket and trying to collapse the pocket. So my guess is they'll look at that a little, especially against Cornelius, who that's where you're going to get burned. You just take that away from him. Just make him throw the ball 30 times.
Would you spy him?
No, I don't think so. I'm not that level. I think if guys just play without, constantly getting into gaps or constantly trying to shift or play games, I think if guys just play head up two gap, they can keep that pocket, solid and then see what he can throw.
It's time for one thing. Last week, your one thing was pretty, I don't know if you hit it or not, but it's pretty close. I think it sort of did the job.
I thought Mwamba was going to play.
Initially, yeah. Yeah.
But
well, we recorded early in the week, I think.
I think, like the sack exchange is going to come. I think once Mwamba is healthy and playing, they can be even more aggressive because they can feel like he's going to clean up behind them. So 2 sacks was, they didn't do that very often last year. So I am optimistic that's coming around. But I think my one thing this time is that I want to see, I guess connected to my bet, I want to see Edmonton, or I want to see Toronto, score a defensive touchdown against Edmonton. The defense hasn't been a scoring defense, and I'd love to see them add that to their arsenal. I think this team is, Fat Pickett almost had a pick six last week. I'd like to see this team get a little better at scoring defensive points.
And my one thing didn't come through last week either. It was close, but it wasn't quite there. I wanted Chad Kelly to have at least 65% completion, and the first half sort of went that way, but the second half, there was a slip, there was a ball thrown away, and he just didn't end up there. But it was the kind of game I wanted. So even though like 14 of 23 is not what I was thinking about in terms of accuracy, really the first half is what you grade Chad Kelly's passing on. They just didn't throw the ball in the second half. It was just run, and then the occasional pass that they just didn't really have much luck on.
Right. I think, are you going for that again, the completion?
No, that's not my one for this week. I'm just saying last week it didn't come through.
And I agree with you that if he plays a little more conservative, a little more check down, you probably get that percentage up.
So my one thing for this week is I want a first series touchdown drive. I want them just to come up, because that might be enough. Edmonton's already on the brink, right? Like Edmonton just got shut out. It's not that they're turning on each other yet, but they're not far from that. And if you come out as Toronto, who just came off a big win last week, and you walk down the field in that first drive and just make it look clinical and score a touchdown, I think you're already going to have the Elks thinking, we're not going to win today. It's just not there. And remember, they haven't won in the stadium. Like, I don't know how many players were on the team the last time they won in the stadium. Not many, if any. They haven't won there in years. And so it's not going to take a lot for the fans to be like, oh, here we go again. And the players, they haven't experienced this. So walk down the field, score a touchdown in your opening drive. You can put this one away early. Edmonton's, if they get down big, they're not coming back. That'll be it. And they're going to start looking for next week and changes and what the next step is. So start it off on the right foot, a no to an out, get down the field, score a touchdown. All right, JB, it is time for the prediction. What do you think for this game? How's this one going to end?
I like Toronto to take care of business. I like Toronto to win 24-15.
I'm similar on that. I've got 28-11 as my score. I just don't think I don't think Toronto has any business letting Edmonton hang around in this game. I know they're still a professional football team, but they didn't look like it last week offensively. The defense is still good, but there's going to be you can answer this as a defensive coordinator. I know I can answer it as an offensive coordinator, but talking about this specifically, if you've got like an offense that isn't producing and you're trying to manage the defense, like the defensive guys have got to start getting frustrated. Like they have to. On the trip home from BC last week on the plane, they got to be like, man, the offense didn't get a single point. We held BC to one touchdown and they didn't get a single point. Like, how much until that boils over? Like, what's it going to take for that to just explode? This is where you answer the question.
Yeah, I know.
Like, is it a half? If they don't score in the first half, is it going to erupt?
I mean, they're so beaten down. Yeah, I mean, there's gonna look. I'm sure that there were a lot of problems after the goal line stops, and that Edmonton felt like the defense felt like they had won that game for the offense, and then the offense poured strawberry jam all over it. So yeah, I do think you run into a real problem there where defense is a position that requires you to give of yourself in a way that's, that you have to kind of risk your body, and that equation changes the less you feel like it's going to result in a win, which is why bad teams often lose lots of games or lose games by big scores in contact sports, because you just can't put your body in that. So yeah, it is a dangerous line that they are crossing if they get down and the offense is turning over the ball because they can't play against a team with the big lead.
And when the Argos aren't playing them, I'm pulling for Edmonton. It's because of their fans. The Edmonton fans are great. The Red Blacks fans are great. When they're not playing the Argonauts, I want those teams to win at home. I just want their fans to see it. I'm cheering for them. But yeah, not this week. Not this week. Let's put that one off for another week. All right, let's get into Put Me Down for 20. A little recap here. JB, you lost both of your bets last week. You took a gamble. You had Toronto winning by between 1 and 6 points. They won by a lot more than that. And then you had Ottawa winning, which didn't happen. I split last week. I had 15 golden fleeces on Andrew Harris under 58.5 yards rushing, which came through. And then I had a parlay with Winnipeg and Edmonton did not help me out for 5 golden fleeces. So currently I stand at 213 golden fleeces and change. You're at 181 and we started at 200. So before we get into our Golden Fleece wagers today, I just want to remind you that while gambling can be a fun way to enhance your sports viewing experience, it's important to do so responsibly. Set a budget. Don't bet more than you're happy to lose. And if you or anyone you know develop a problem with gambling, you can call the Ontario Problem Gambling Helpline, 1-888-230-3505. All right, JB, let's get into our bets this week. So we've got to make one Argos bet and one bet somewhere else in the league. Let's start with your Argos bet. Where are you going for this wager?
My Argos bet, I went back and forth on a couple of choices, but I really like the Argos defense to score a touchdown anytime for plus 330. I'm pulling for that. I think Edmonton could turn over the ball. Peters is back. He's going to be ball hawking like crazy to try and make an impression. I like Argos defense to score.
Plus 330. That's a nice payout. So.
Yeah, and like that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. That's nice juice.
And my Argos bet, I'm going to take Tavares Daniels to score a touchdown at plus 150. I feel like he's sort of got Edmonton's number somehow. He scored a touchdown late the last time these two teams played, which was a really close game in Edmonton, and that touchdown made the difference. It put them ahead with just like a few minutes to go. AJ Ouellette ended up putting the game away, but yeah, Tavares stepped up. And I think he's going to be on the side that there are question marks about. So I feel like between he and Coxie, who are going to be on that side, one of them is going to score a touchdown. I think Tavares Daniels didn't have the big game last week. Coxie did. So I think we're more likely to see a big game from Daniels this week. Where are you going with your other 10 golden fleeces around the league, JB?
My other one is the brewing quarterback controversy in Hamilton. And I have Sir Matthew Schultz scoring a touchdown anytime, plus 200. And then lighting Hamilton on fire. So that's kind of a double-sided bet for me. But I like him. I think he's going to come in and get that done. Even if he doesn't start, he is definitely going to get the short yardage stuff in the red zone.
I want to talk about the Hamilton quarterback controversy later when we get to our CFL picks, but I've got a couple of interesting thoughts on that. I like that bet. Plus 200 is nice too. My other 10 golden fleeces, I'm going to put straight up on Saskatchewan on the money line. I've got them at plus 140. I just think that's a really tight game. I think that's a coin toss kind of game. Saskatchewan, Calgary. I think they're pretty similar teams. I think Saskatchewan might be slightly better. And so I know it's in Calgary, and I know they're supposed to have a better crowd out than they did last time, but plus 140 I like. So that's where my 10 golden fleeces are going. CFL picks. So I think we're going to be on the same page a little more than usual this week. We'll see how we do. But I think there's some big spreads this week. So we tend not to get a lot of risk taking. So BC at Winnipeg. I'm going to take Winnipeg for this one. Are you going with BC, or is this Winnipeg for you?
I like Winnipeg here still.
I just think they're the best team in the league.
I think they're the best team in the league.
I'm not even sure I don't even know
doubt
that they've played well. Like, I don't feel like they played that well against Saskatchewan. I thought Saskatchewan played really well, and Winnipeg won by like 20. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they are mad they didn't win the Grey Cup, and they are on a mission.
And they have to view BC as a threat. BC has won both of their games by double digits, and they're coming off a shutout win. Winnipeg's not going to be sleepy on the BC Lions, so I think they're going to get the both barrels from Winnipeg. Montreal Hamilton. This is a tough one. These are one of the two tough games here. Who do you think is going to win between those teams? I've got Hamilton. I'll tell you why afterwards. Do you have Montreal or Hamilton?
I do have Hamilton. I have Hamilton at home. I don't think Hamilton is as poor. I think Hamilton had a tough break. They had to go to Winnipeg. They had to come to Toronto. I think that Schultz is going to be hot, and I think they're going to be at home, and that crowd is going to be hot. And I don't think Montreal is particularly good. So I think you put all that together, and that's a Hamilton win.
I agree with all those things, and I'm laughing because I do think Schultz is going to play well, because that's, in some ways, it's the worst thing that can happen to Hamilton, because like you alluded to in the previous segment, there's going to be a quarterback controversy. There's one already. Like, Hamilton fans already are all over this, talking about how much better Schultz played last week than Bo Levi Mitchell. And the thing is, it's really not true. Like, statistically, yes, his stats were better. Well, yeah, I know you want to feed that. But the thing is, I was talking about this today with a bunch of Argos fans who wanted to go down to Hamilton to see the game, just to see the fire that is going to be burning, because there's nothing that can go right for Hamilton this week. Because you think about this, if they lose, then yes, they know, okay, well, I guess Bo's the quarterback, but they're 0-3 and they're in the basement of the East. If they win, now suddenly everyone's going to want Schultz to start, and Bo Levi Mitchell is going to be healthy, if not next week, the week after. He's going to be dressed for this game, as I understand it. They were all over the map. He's not going to play. He's going to dress, but he's not going to play, but he'll dress and be the third quarterback. He's not healthy enough. That's why he's not playing. But it's just a mess of a situation. So no matter what happens, Hamilton loses this week, because even if they win, they've now got a quarterback controversy, and they're paying a lot of money to Bo Levi Mitchell, and it's not even correct. Like, he should be the guy. So I know Argos fans are delighted about the situation that Hamilton finds themselves in. So we'll see what goes down on. So that's the Friday night game. That's gonna be a good one. Saskatchewan, Calgary. So I've already told you that's my bet. So I'm picking Saskatchewan over Calgary. I think Saskatchewan looked pretty good. They looked okay in the opener. They probably should have lost Edmonton. They looked okay. It was the first game with all sorts of new parts. They look good against Winnipeg. It's Winnipeg. So I think they beat Calgary. What about you?
I went back and forth on this a long time. I know I like Saskatchewan early preseason, but it's possible Saskatchewan is not very good. And Calgary, although Ottawa is not good, Calgary really went in and dominated them. So I'm going to go Calgary at home.
All right. And we both have Toronto over Edmonton. So our only difference this week is the Saskatchewan-Calgary game. On the season, we're both 5-3, JB. So you're off to a much hotter start than you got off to last week. Or
Plus,
last year.
I have an asterisk there, since Edmonton should have won their game.
You can't. That's not a thing. So this is going to be a good one. Sunday night. Sunday night again. What do you think about the Sunday night? Before we sign off, what do you think about the Sunday night football?
I like it. I think it's a nice TV window. And look, I thought the turnout at the home opener was pretty good. 15,000. That's a nice Argo number.
It's just short of 16 and not boosted by Ticats.
Nice. I like Sunday night football. I think in the summer it's an open window. There's Sunday night baseball, but that's not really a thing in Canada, and the Jays are never on it. So I think it's a window to be filled. I think having a Sunday night game every week, it makes sense to me.
Surprisingly, the numbers weren't very good for this one. I thought they would be. Hamilton, Toronto, especially with there not being a lot of Hamilton fans in attendance. I actually thought the ratings would be good, but they weren't. I think it was the worst. Justin Dunk had that up on 3 Down Nation, and I think it was the lowest rated game of the week.
I'm not entirely sure. I mean, one of the challenges we've talked about, is how they have games on at, Tuesday at 10 a.m. and then Thursday at 4 and then Saturday at 4 p.m. and then Sunday at 6 a.m. And it can be hard to develop a schedule or a following when you're not sure what day football is on. But I do believe in the Sunday night game. I would love to see them kind of push it like the Friday night game and have it be a regular thing that they push with a little bit of advertising.
Yeah, I think there's something there too, but like you're saying, it's got to be a consistent time. Like it can't be all over the map.
It's got to be Sunday night football. Like I mean, maybe you come up with a different name, but you can say, we've been waiting all day, eh?
Because I hate that about there's a Friday night game. You're like, all right, Friday night football is right. You sit down and you're like, what? It doesn't start till 10. Like, oh
I know. You're right. It's got to be the same time. You just have to force those Western teams to play at a reasonable time. And Sunday night has to be like 7:00, and it's got to be every Sunday, no matter who's playing, and try and come up with a Canadian name for Sunday.
Well, that will just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos pregame walkthrough. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.